Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Rivilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Rivilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. Today's guest is a thought leader and author in everything pricing and how companies can use pricing to drive higher growth, sales volume, and profits. He's run companies in Europe and America and conducted business in over 40 countries. At all those firms, he conducted pricing experiments, some successful and some not quite so successful. But 15 years ago, he decided to develop a process that will make every pricing experiment a success. He has become the thought leader in everything related to transforming companies and driving unsurpassed business results by better pricing. Tailoring Talkers, please join me in welcoming Per, the Price Whisperer, Sjofors, to the Tailoring Talk Show. Per, how are you?
I'm very well, and thank you very much, Roberto, for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to our talk here.
Yeah, no, me too. And we were saying in our pre-talk, Per, this was possibly quite fortuitous. We've been feeling a little bit sort of, what's the word? Dazed, I would say, the last 48 hours because we had some very, very short notice price rise notifications, quite significant from most of our material suppliers. So that has sorted out my weekend, unfortunately. But my mind has been racing backwards and forwards, as you can probably imagine. And so I'm hoping by the end of our recording that you'll have calmed me down a little bit. But it is something that's going on. We'll get onto that in a little while. But firstly, how are you? You're calling all the way from LA.
All the way from LA, where for once it's a cloudy morning. It doesn't happen very often. Certainly not this time of year.
Yeah, no, totally.
we do have there's something in late spring, early summer that is called June gloom, where they call it the marine layer comes in from the cold ocean over the landmass, and it looks like we have it today as well. We had it yesterday too. Very unusual.
Yeah. Well, as is typical when you're talking to a Brit, I'll happily get into the weather, but out the window, it is cloudy over here, which is typical. But you know that because you have lived over in London.
Yeah, I did in the 90s. You mentioned that I've been running companies, and one of these companies was the European subsidiary of a Japanese electronics maker. And we started off having our office in Putney in London and on Upper Richmond Road, and because I don't like commuting, I decided to live close to. So I lived in Putney for a while, and then we moved the office a little south to Wimbledon, and I bought myself a house there in Wimbledon Park and lived there for a few years, And now I hear that there's from friends that I have that they're trying to expand the what do you call it, the All English Lawn Club or something like that, where the Wimbledon with the tennis courts are.
Yeah.
And there's some kind of protest going on regarding that I did sign, because who knows, maybe I'll move back.
I hope so. I do hope so. We apparently, according to the media, there's going to be a house pricing crash soon, so it might be a good time to get in.
Yeah, well, that's sort of funny because sometimes you check prices, house prices, and so forth, and it used to be that I found London house prices being extraordinarily expensive. Not anymore. I guess what's happening here is that prices here have risen so much that there's some kind of parity with what it is in the UK.
Yeah, suddenly we're looking like good value over here. There are people that are listening to this that live in other parts of the UK that will be shaking their heads thinking, what a couple of snobs. But hey, you know what? I was born here, but unfortunately, that's the lily pad or the set of lily pads I started leaping on as I climbed up the property ladder. So, hey ho.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so you, but so people are probably listening to your accent and thinking he doesn't sound very LA. Now, I picked your accent up straight away because I have lots of clients from your part of the world.
Yeah.
You're from Sweden originally.
Yes. But I left Sweden in 1986 and established a company down in Zurich in Switzerland and ran that for a few years, and then I did this stint in London, and then I came here to the US, and I established and ran the division of a fairly large public company, and since then I've had another 4 CEO positions. And but just like you said in the intro, we did experiments of pricing in these instances, and some were very successful. Meaning that in the next quarter revenues were up 25%. Others were complete duds. And what I had learned in business school about pricing was so theoretical and so academic that it was useless information. 15 years ago, I decided I was too old and too opinionated to be a hired gun. So I set up my own shop and developed that process that we still use that makes every pricing experiment a success. And obviously we refined ourselves over the years. So we help companies of all sizes, anywhere from Fortune 500s to pre-revenue startups. So
Yeah. Wow. Because when talking about pricing models and theory of pricing models, because you get the retail price theory, which is generally that, for a smaller retail organization, usually you work on either a ×3 or a ×5 markup. So at the smaller scale, the ×3 markup, for listeners that don't know, is that you have your cost of product and you times by 3. So you have a third, which is cost, a third, which is your overheads, and then a third, which is profit. And then bigger retailers might have a ×5, and a fifth is cost, a fifth is God, I've completely lost my train of thought on what I'm doing. It's because we work on the smaller retail principle in my business. But you've then got a marketing cost and then maybe something else as well. Other types of business will work on a different sort of pricing strategy. I'm not sure exactly what it is for my consulting clients that are out there. And then you have other businesses that I do know of that are literally just to stick a finger up in the air, and whatever seems to feel right is what they'll price a product or a service at. How do you? What's the kind of approach that you would take when, I guess, taking on a new customer, looking at their business, and then sort of working out, what sort of approach they should be taking?
Well, the process that I developed and that we use in my company is based on willingness to pay research. So what we do is that we developed a particular kind of doing online polling of a company's marketplace, from where we can very accurately understand what potential customers are willing to pay for a product or a service. And then we take that measurement of willingness to pay, and we turn it into an accurate prediction of sales volume and revenue at different prices. And when you know what price that generates the highest sales volume, and you know what price generates the highest profits, you have a choice. You either want to and the price that generates the highest profits and the highest revenue are always higher than the price that generates the highest sales volume. And there's a misconception out there that you have to be the lowest in price to get the highest sales volume, because there's something called expectation bias, and expectation bias means that it really means two things. First off, it means that if you're being presented with a price that you feel is too low, you're not going to buy whatever is offered to you, because you're going to think that, and we've all been there, we hold something in our hands, whether literally or figuratively, and we say to ourselves, I kind of want to buy this, but this is so cheap that it can't be any good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I mean, in your profession, it's something that's very prevalent. I can assure you. And the other thing that expectation bias gives you is customer satisfaction. If you if you buy something that is relatively expensive, you are going to be a more satisfied customer than if you bought the same thing at a lower price. And there's been oodles of research into this into this topic. And for example, a 5-cent aspirin is not as good as curing a headache as a 50-cent aspirin is, right? You pay more for that aspirin and you expect a better outcome, and because of that, you get a better outcome, right? And I obviously the same goes for bespoke clothing. You pay more, you are you're going to be more satisfied than if you buy something at a discounted price.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I guess a big example, or a great example of that, is Apple nowadays.
Oh, yes.
In the modern day, right? I mean, God knows there are plenty of people that complain that Apple products are too expensive. They're mostly Android users. Sorry to the 5% of my audience that are using Android devices. And sorry to you as well, Per, if you fit into that category. But I'm not going to apologize for it. So, because I was saying this to my wife the other day, that, everything that goes around an Apple product is all about satisfaction, quality, the customer support that goes around it, which means that for their hardcore user base, which is tens of millions of people worldwide, we don't really question what we're paying for things. If I have to go and get a new laptop, I don't bother looking at anything else. Windows laptops and so on feel not just cheap to me, but also if anything goes wrong with them, where the hell do I go to get service? At least with Apple, I know that they've got their ecosystem is there to support me and not let me fail. And then the other thing as well, I mean, you've got, I'm waving, if I don't know if I'm going to put this on YouTube, but I'm waving the AirPods Pro 2 box at Per right now, and he knows what I'm going to say. It's like when I open this thing, I get more joy actually out of opening this thing and handling the package than I do out of the actual AirPods themselves, although the new ones are brilliant, people. £249 price tag. Am I bothered about it? No, because, they're ticking all the boxes. So that level of satisfaction that you're talking about is exemplified there in that Apple logo and everything that they do. Something that we certainly try to emulate on a smaller scale in our own business as well. And I had someone who called yesterday who was asking if he could get a suit made, and I won't bore you with the entire story, but it pretty much ended with me saying, if you want the cheapest, we are not the tailors for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the market that I'm in. That's not the type of customer that I serve. But if you're after the best and you're after the best customer service, then definitely let's continue the conversation, because that's where we're at. So we're very clear about that. And I'm sure a lot of businesses are. But then obviously when you actually sit down to start working out your pricing for new season, that's where all the fear and doubt start to creep in. And I think maybe something you alluded to earlier, something that a lot of people are calling niching down, which is identifying exactly what your real target market is. And then what you're doing is you're doing everything for them, your marketing, your pricing, and so on. All that strategy is geared towards that audience. You're not worrying about the people that you don't want to serve. Is there any relevance to that?
Oh, yes.
What we're talking about?
First of all, I'm watching you on an Apple screen, and the computer is a top end, really top end MacBook Pro that I'm running this on, and
Snap.
but I do have I do have a 4K camera that you're looking at, which is a Sony. But so everything is Apple here, right? And the and you're right, the opening up the box of a new iPhone, for example, it's like having sex, it's unbelievable.
I love that.
And they really created that mystique that supports higher prices than what the Samsungs of the world have. Now I know some people who very strongly opposed to that sort of walled garden, that being within the Apple ecosystem hinders you to be, but it also has a lot of benefits, and way back when before they, before the phones and stuff like that, when they only sold computers, the big deal with Apple was that it just worked, and the alternatives didn't work. I mean, or it worked spotty. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't, So, but Apple, let me tell you another thing that Apple have done that is quite interesting. And you showed the earbuds. My ears and earbuds doesn't work, so I don't use them. But they unbundled, right? So it used to be that you bought an iPhone, it came with a charger, it came with earphones, and it came with a cable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't anymore, right? You have to buy the charger, you have to buy the cable if you want that, or you have to buy a wireless charger, and you have to buy the earbuds,
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, when they did this unbundling, I did a sort of a back of a napkin calculation of what that slight unbundle will do for their revenues, and I estimated that it would add about $4.5 billion in revenue.
Wow.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, let's say you've got your typical iPhone these days, and most people will go for a large screen phone, so they'll go Pro, and they're spending, I don't know, £1,100. Or dollars, because it's pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
But then you're now we're at a cycle change to new AirPods, so you're standing there waiting for them to bring your new phone out. You've already spent $1,100 on a pre-order, then you spend another $250 on your AirPods. Then you might decide that you need to get a wireless charger, and that's another $40. So you're up nearly $300. So that's already added 30-40% to that sales value, to that retail ticket,
and that's unbundling for you. Now, I also want to touch with the other thing you said about focusing on a particular niche, and what we do in my business. I mentioned that we have this we do a prediction of sales volume and revenue at different prices, but then we take that and we segment it so we can tell our clients what market segments have the highest willingness to pay, and therefore supporting higher prices than another market segment. We can identify the product features and functions that lead to higher willingness to pay, and also then support higher prices than other feature functions. And the same with marketing channels, marketing messages, sales channels, and sales methodologies, and so forth. So what we advise clients about is really a whole go-to-market strategy. You know, focus on this particular market segment with these particular feature functions, whether it's a product or a service. Use these marketing channels with those messages, and these sales channels with those sales methodologies, and obviously with a pricing strategy that is often stratified in some way, that sales friction is minimized and revenues are maximized. So
Yeah. So would you say that, I mean, if you had to pick one thing that kickstarts this process off, is it identifying your target audience and then working the pricing strategy through from there?
well, I mean, from us, it's getting you get all of it, you know. If you're a small entrepreneur starting out, I mentioned about expectation bias, right? So one thing you can do as a small entrepreneur, you can go out and find, say, 25 potential clients. Now, those are not your customers. They are not your current prospects. They are certainly not friends and family. And what you do is that you find these people, and by the way, if you can't find them and you're starting off, then you have bigger problems than pricing. You describe your product or your service and the specific benefits you believe it has, and then you ask that person, now when you know what we do, what is a price that is so low you don't think that it will be any good? What is a price that you think that we over promise and going to under deliver, right?
Okay.
And then you say, and then we look at the flip side. Assume then that we're actually going to over deliver, and the quality and benefit is better than you think. What is still a price that is so high you wouldn't buy it, right? And when you take the average of those 2 points, and you talk to at least 25 potential customers, you have sort of a range. It's not going to be cheaper than that, and it's not going to be more expensive than that.
Yeah.
And then if you can continue to do that, and the phraseology here is very important, you cannot ask people what they're willing to pay, right? But you can ask them, what is a price that is so low you don't think that it will be any good?
Yeah.
And what is a price that is too high no matter how good it is?
Yeah.
And then, of course, so you have a range, and then you want to put your price towards the high end of that range, obviously, right? If you can continue to do this, and you eventually get to 75 or maybe 100 potential buyers, then you can start looking at trends, right? Maybe there's a profile of customers that has a higher range than another profile. Then you know which one to focus on, right?
Yeah.
And that could be if you're selling, consulting services, that may be a type of customer, or it could be a type of size of company if it's B2B or whatever,
Yeah.
So and this is something that for small startup companies can take months to do, right? But it's also a way of making sure that you don't leave at least massive of money on the table, right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess that one of the problems you may have come across with startup companies is that they'll often price aggressively, we'll call it, price low, because they're trying to get everybody. They're just trying to get customers through the door and try and get revenue. And then what happens is maybe a year, 2 years, they get to the stage where they do have a clientele, or they have something that you can call a business, but then they're so scared to start to raise their prices to those original customers that they went in so low with, because they're scared of losing them. And then what happens is they end up, maybe if they get to year 2 or year 3 with a business that is not making any money at all, is even losing money hand over fist,
Yeah.
because of these early decisions that were made.
There's a couple of different things on that topic actually. The first is that um, if you go out in the market with some kind of disruptive product or disruptive service, you are only going to sell that to early adopters. And early adopters are buying for all different reasons, but low price is not one of them, right?
God knows. Well, I was only 17 or 18, and Sony brought out the mini disc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was about then. They brought out the mini disc. Now, I'm an 18-year-old with a part-time job. I'm not earning that much money, but I am an early adopter. I was all over that mini disc Walkman.
Yeah.
It was mainly so that people would stop borrowing my Walkman at college, right? Because other kids would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, can I borrow your Walkman?" And I'd pull out the mini disc thing, and they would say, "What the hell is that?" What the hell is that? I didn't know what it, and so that was it. I didn't need to give my stuff away.
Yeah.
But I've always been one of those early adopters, so price doesn't matter to me. It's more about being able to get my hands on the product. Anyway, I'm so sorry I interrupted you.
No. But I think you explain exactly what I was about to say. But what happens often when you're a startup and the problem with early adopters, of course, is that there's only few of them. So and this happens frequently that you go out to market and you find a few early adopters, you sell to them, and maybe half a year or a year go by, and you look at what you had in your financial plans and what you promised investors, if you have those, and you look at your bank balance and you panic, right? and because it's nowhere near where you thought it should be, and that panic generates a drop in price, which at best means that you have the same sales level. Often it means the sales level goes down. And
because you change your perception as soon as you do that, and you drop your price because maybe something is not working. The perception from the consumer point of view is, well, that must be crap, because they've suddenly had to drop the price to try and sell more of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have the challenge of increasing prices, which you can do. And it depends on the particular business. You can always increase prices, but it's doing it the right way is a process. And that also goes to your situation with your increase in cost of the fabric that you're using, right? And the way you want to do this, well, first of all, that's if you are one of those startups, and you for whatever reason cannot increase your prices, and you lower them, you're going to run out of money, right?
Yeah.
In your case, where you have an ongoing business, is a little different, because what you want to do is, for returning customers, right? For new customers, this is not an issue. It's just, this is the price, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you need to pass those price increases on to your new customers. For returning customers, you have to message that we have absorbed price increases now for the last several years, and now it come to the point that we have to pass on some of those to you, right? And that's the key, some of those, right? And then if and then you have to explain why, and often it especially I guess in your particular situation, it's all about saying that unless we do so, we cannot continue to serve you with the quality, because we have to cut corners.
Yeah.
And we don't want to cut corners, right? And if somebody is really rebellious, you say, well, okay, will the next suit you're going to order, we'll keep the old price, but then the following one will have the new price, right? So you grandfather them in, right?
Grandfather them in. I like that, Sam.
Yeah. Maybe that's a US only term. I don't know, but the key is to remind the customer of the value that you bring, together with the price increase, right? And you started to talk about different pricing strategies, and cost plus is one of them. Unfortunately, it's one of the pricing strategies that is guaranteed to leave money on the table, right? Because the fact is that your cost is irrelevant for the client.
Mm.
And we talked about that in terms of Apple. I don't think an iPhone costs more to make than an equivalent Samsung or whatever phone, right? And yet they command much higher prices because of all its and these Samsung phones and so forth. They are often a generation of technology ahead of Apple, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think Samsung probably changed something in their pricing model around about the Galaxy series. I would probably say about the Series 7. All of a sudden, they were doing the fancy launch events. So they were going for the May launch window rather than September, obviously to get ahead of Apple. And then I remember, because I have tried to break out of the ecosystem a few times, and I've had the S7, I've had the S8. I've gone back to Apple like straight away because it just completely tore my world apart. But Samsung, I think, definitely went, more to that higher end. So if you look at the equivalent Samsung to an iPhone, they're about the same sort of price now. Sometimes Samsung are even more. But what Samsung have done noticeably is their range is much wider. So you can they have more cheaper options, whereas Apple only have one iPhone that's the cheaper option, which is the SE. They only have one watch, which is the cheaper option, which is the SE. And usually what they're doing is they're using that model to get rid of the bucket of chips that they've got that, from an older generation. Whereas Samsung are putting investment into these lower end products to hit a certain market every year as well.
So that spurred another thought here. And there's something else that is important when it comes to pricing, and that is something called price imaging or price anchoring. And when what this means is that as humans, if we are exposed to two different numbers, we cannot not compare them. We always compare them. And we set them in relation to each other in our heads, right? And when Apple launched the watch, right, it was $349. I don't know what it was in the UK, but I guess it was very similar in pounds.
I think the aluminium version was about £400, and then the stainless steel version was $599.
Okay. Anyway, here it was $395. $349. But they also had an old gold version at $17,000. And the what happened was that all media wrote about the audacity of Apple to sell the same electronics for $349 and for $17,000. But the point is that everyone who was interested in an Apple Watch read media, and they were exposed to the 17,000 versus the 349, and that made that 349. Every time they read about it, it made that 349 more and more and more affordable, right?
Yeah, bargain.
And that is something. I mean, it even goes to your business. You can you can you can have an I don't know how you sell, but maybe you do
We
this
go
by
we go we go in a similar top-down fashion, Per. So
Mhm.
basically, we always talk about the work that we do best, the work that we love to do. The work that we love to do is at our bespoke end with the
Yes.
best fabrics in the world, from Dorme, Holland and Sherry, and Laura Piana, and so on. It's using our hand grade. We do actually like to sit there for hundreds of man hours with a needle and thread, actually putting
Oh
these
wow.
things together. And it's all the components within the suit, the shoulder padding, the canvassing, and so on. It's the finest, the lightest, but the strongest and the best performing materials that we can get our hands on.
Hmm.
So all the ingredients that are going to this dish of a suit, just every point means that when it goes onto the person, the wearer's back, they look at you with this look of wonder and astonishment and pleasure all at the same time. They can't believe how this thing doesn't feel like anything on them,
Mm.
right? So that's what we always start talking about with new clients,
Hmm.
which is at our higher pricing scale, but then we sort of scale it down to
Hmm.
what our equivalent of the low end Apple Watch would be, which is our opening price point. And usually what we
Mm.
find is when we explain things to someone in that way and we educate them about our range in that way, top down, that if they're not a top of the range customer, they will usually land about the middle
Yes.
because they don't want to be seen as being a cheapskate, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
it
that's
also
something that
means that
I've tested over 20 years in my career. If
sure.
I put three fabrics in front of you and I say this suit's 1,000, this one's 1,500, this is 2,000, people who are a little bit more price sensitive will generally land in the middle of that scale.
And the next time you do it, you start with the top one. You start with the 2,000. This is 1,500, and this is 1,000.
Mm.
Um, but one thing that you can do if you want to sell more of those very high end suits, right, is to say, if you buy two of them or if you buy three of them, this is the price, whatever the price happens to be. I don't know your pricing at all. So you create a bundle of multiple suits, right? Very few people will buy that bundle, if anyone, right? But it's going to lead to a higher sales volume of a single suit at the highest price, right?
Yeah.
And is probably is going to lead to even more sales of the mid tier, if you like, because suddenly you have something that is very expensive as an anchor, and everything at lower prices will appear more affordable.
Yeah.
Psychology, pricing psychology.
Yeah.
So there's something else that you touched on, which I also think is very important, and that is, and also for the audience here, and that is discounting, right? And there are people out there that if you discount, and certainly if you discount too much, you are denigrating the value of what you deliver. And in fact, through that process that that we have developed, we can see the most effective way of discounting as well. And any discount, this obviously is a little different from different products in different markets, but in general terms, any discount more than 20% does not lead to higher sales volume. It just leaves money on the table, right? But at the same token, any discount less than 10% is ineffective, right? So so that would be the typical range that you want to, if you discount, it should be more than 10, not more than 20.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think I think when
and
you're in
I'm
a,
thinking about this more for your audience than you.
yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you lot listening, I'll try and put a what's it, majig at the beginning of the episode, to say that this isn't intentionally meant to be an Apple episode. The reason why we're using Apple as an example is, even if you don't like Apple products, it's still, they are the richest company in the world, the most successful company in the world. And there are a lot of lessons you can take from what they've done and maybe translate on a greater or lesser degree in your own business. That's certainly what we do at Roberto Rivilla London. And the reason why we're using my business as an example is because that's what I do. And regular listeners will know that I'll use examples from my own life, whether it's my business, personal life, whatever it happens to be talking about on the day, to try and just give you examples. So try and internalize some of what Per is teaching us today and apply them to your own situation. And feel free to write in or get in touch with me at any point if you want to beat around the bush on any of this stuff. Sorry, Per. Continue.
No, that's okay.
I'm like, do you know what? I am literally sat here. I am like a kid. If we were in the same room together, Per, I would be sat cross-legged on the floor like a little child with my thumb in my mouth, just absorbing everything you say. I love this. This is absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The obviously I've been doing this now for many years, and there's so, let me give you some examples here of what good pricing can do for a company. And some of these are maybe a little a little larger companies, but I have a book out called the Price Whisper, and I sent out, it's called The Price Whisper, with the subtitle A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. Pricing power, by the way, is a phrase coined by Warren Buffett, and he said that his investment strategy is solely on to companies that has pricing power, and then he can continue by defining it as pricing power is the ability to increase prices without losing sales volume. And but anyway, I sent out advanced review copies to some prior customers, and of course, I got a lot of good feedback on the book. One guy, Jim Minaric, he wrote back and he said, "Your teachings helped us to grow from 100 million to way over 1 billion. Thank you very much."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just some other clients.
Did he send you a check with that feedback?
No, he didn't.
If he ever listens to this, you tell him the Charles, was it Charles Schwab, where he went into a fair? Do you remember that? There's that story. Was it Charles Schwab?
No, I don't know.
You don't know that story?
No, I don't.
Charles Schwab's the insurance guy, right?
No, he's they're a financial institution.
Oh yeah, I thought that it was insurance, something to do with finances. Anyway, but I think the story. I need to look the story up because it is quite it's quite a great, sort of teaching point. But he actually, thinking about it in the context of what you do, that's probably not a good teaching point. He went in and consulted for someone for free, and they were like, "Well, how much is this going to be?" And he said, "You write me a check at the end, and for whatever it's worth." And at the time, I mean, you're talking about 150 years ago, they wrote him a check for like $20,000. Yeah, because he transformed their business. Anyway, so whoever gave you that feedback and Per's advice helped you to increase your revenues by $900 million. You might want to. Anyway, sorry, Per.
Yeah, that's okay. I have some other examples. As well, we took another company earlier this year from 200 to 250 million, and it took us 3 weeks to do.
Wow.
And I just got a call from actually an email from a prior client, also from this year. They sell a membership, and they sell this membership through companies that are using it as an employee benefit, right? And for reasons I don't know, they sell on they call it a cohort. Every quarter there's a new cohort, and
Right.
they renew this membership quarterly. And he said he followed our advice and for Q3. And he said we lost a few customers, but our revenues are up 150%.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Funny
and
that.
and had another call a couple of weeks ago from a CEO of a company in a very specialized niche business in the health industry, and he said, "I'm just calling to thank you." You know, so and he said, continues to say that you completely transformed our company.
Yeah. It can
So
have a huge impact. I mean, we saw that climbing out of this pandemic. Yes, tailoring talkers, I'm going to talk about the pandemic again. But try and use a different example this time. So, our business is shut. Then we had to, I rather than sitting on my hands, thought people are still wearing clothes. They're just not wearing the clothes that we make at the moment. So then we introduced a custom smart casual clothing line
mhm,
because when you've got pain, let's just imagine that you've got tooth pain, which is
mhm,
one of the worst types of pains that you can have. You will pay any amount of money for someone to make that pain go away.
mhm,
And the pain that our clients were feeling during lockdown was that they were still having to buy clothes, but they were having to shop online because the stores were shut. They're
yeah,
buying casual clothes and the stuff was turning up and it wasn't fitting properly or it wasn't right. But then they
yeah,
couldn't send it back because the post offices were all closed or the lines for the post offices were out of control. And they went past the returns window and they're just burning money.
yeah,
So, we said, we've got your measurements. We can make shirts, we can make jeans, chinos, polo shirts, shorts, whatever it is you guys are wearing. Tell us. We'll see if
yeah,
we can create a solution.
yeah,
So perfect, right? So that only brought enough revenue for us to really tread water and survive.
yeah,
We come out of the pandemic, people are like, I need to buy suits again. I need to buy this and that again. But I really love the casual stuff that you did for me. So
mhm,
it increased our transaction value by almost double
yeah,
because we suddenly had all this stuff that we could add on
yeah,
um, that we just didn't have before.
mhm,
But then when we got to talking about suits and things, we had probably about 60% of our client base that had disengaged during the pandemic. And to this
mhm,
day, almost 2 years later, we've still not been able to reach them.
mhm,
But the other 40% that are still hanging in there, we've obviously had a bit more breathing time with them. And we've been able to re-educate them almost on what we do, the value of what we do, or a lot of them have been reminded of the value of what we do because they've been without us for 2 years.
yeah,
They're all buying at a much higher level than they were previously.
mhm.
And what it has done is banged our revenue up. We're having our best 12-month period, my best 12-month period in 20 years of doing this.
Oh wow,
It's absolutely incredible. With
that's
less
great.
people, with less people.
Yeah,
So it's not quite the same, but I guess the example can probably be used for what we're talking about today. But that's the personal impact I've experienced through all of this.
yeah. Well, I have another client, also a garment manufacturer, actually, and he maybe half a year ago, something like that. He sent me a screenshot of his accounting system, and it showed that sales volume was down a little bit, margins were up by 49%. And his message to me was very clear. It was very short. He said, "Less work, more money." you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're fairly small. They're about, I don't know, 6 million or thereabouts. So but so and all of this is based on two things. One is to price based on a measurement of what customers to a company are willing to pay, and that you start taking price and putting price as a centerpiece of the whole business strategy. thinking about price all the time, thinking about not giving away too much discount, thinking about, can I unbundle here? Can I create a bundle here and charge more for it? Can I present prices in such a way that I minimize sales friction? Can I increase my prices on certain things? Do I have to decrease prices on certain things to increase not only sales volume but also revenues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that whole thinking of I guess putting price as a centerpiece in the business, in your business strategy. And there's a I do something that I call the 1% challenge. And if you think about any business, the resulting profit comes from only three things, three variables. It is the total cost of operation, it is the total sales of whatever you sell, and it is the price of whatever you sell. And if you do a thought experiment and you say, what if I change any of those 1%? Well, what happened if you're like the average company? And of course, there's no average company. Every company is different. But for the average company, if you can increase your sales volume with 1%, profit goes up with 3.5%. If you can decrease your cost with 1%, profit goes up with 5.5%. But if you can increase your price or decrease your discounting with 1%, profit goes up with 11.3%.
Wow.
And the challenge, I said, this is the 1% challenge, right?
Yeah.
The challenge is, have you ever failed to change anything a single percent? Of course you haven't, right? No. And you start looking at that and you say, hey, maybe I can reduce my discounting from an average 15% to an average 10%. Maybe I can increase my prices 5%. And suddenly your profits are up 50%. So what are you going to do with those profits? You're not going to have it in the bank, right? You're going to reinvest it in your company. You're going to you're going to develop more products. You're going to define more services. You're going to increase your marketing spend. You're going to hire better people, right? Etc. Etc.
Yeah.
So it's that, and this is what I encourage the audience here to. There's actually on our website we have a little 1% calculator, so you can put in your cost and your revenues, and it is going to tell you how much it's going to affect your profitability. And what I'm saying is that if you as a company, even you're a small company, you have the management team knowing all of this all the time, lots of small changes is going to happen, and it's going to have that profound impact on the company that we heard from Jim Minerick,
Yeah.
So
I'm people can't see this, but I'm grinning like an idiot at Per here because I love this stuff, this type of mathematics. I was never really strong on mathematics at school. It never really interested me. I never saw the point of simultaneous equations and that sort of thing. But this type of maths, the magic in the numbers, is what fascinates me, especially when it comes to business. I absolutely love this sort of stuff. You mentioned that tool on the website. Is that at Sjofors.com?
Yeah, it's Sjofors.com. It's a difficult URL, but you can always find me by just Google searching on the Price Whisper. So
exactly, Google search the Price Whisperer and you will find him absolutely everywhere. But I'm going to make sure I have the link in the show notes, and also Per on his website has a page. It's Pricing Strategy Services. I won't read out the link here because it's a little bit long.
No.
Actually, no, I will. It's sjofors.com/pricing strategy services. And it's a page which has embedded videos that explain the basis for good pricing practice. You can get a little discount there using the code FULL2022. But again, I will have that in the show notes for all of you. And also, Per very modestly mentioned his book, The Price Whisperer. It is available in Kindle format now at a real bargain price. So maybe just go check it out as a taster. But the hard copy will be available from November the 8th. And again, I will make sure that I have relevant links in there. But it's published by Simon & Schuster in the States. So it's probably going to be available everywhere over here, Waterstones, Amazon, etc. What am I saying over here? I've got listeners on every continent of this planet.
Well, over here, over there,
over here, over there, everywhere. We're one world.
Yes.
I'm not going to get into politics, but you would think that some of our political leaders don't believe that anymore. Per,
yes,
have you had fun today?
Yes, it's been a very very, very good conversation. I think you've you obviously are passionate about what you do, and I love that. I love passionate people and passionate entrepreneurs.
Oh, thank you. And honestly, I feel like I'm just so privileged to have been able to spend some time with you today. I feel like I've taken more time from you than I should have done.
Okay.
But honestly, thank you so much. Your book is lined up, ready to go on my Kindle. So that is going to be my bedtime reading for the next few days, and I've already pre-ordered the hard copy of the book as well. So I can't wait to actually get my hands on that. I am a new student for you, and I really encourage. Oh no, you're welcome. Thank you. It's also just been a privilege. My wife and I, we're really into Scandi dramas at the moment on Netflix.
Oh.
So it's just been a real pleasure just talking to you for an hour and just listening to that beautiful, rich accent that you have. It's fantastic.
All right. Well, I appreciate very much. You should look at some of the older ones because they are typically better.
Yeah. Well, you mean like The Bridge and
no, older ones.
Oh, even older than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Share some suggestions with me and the audience.
The Wallander series. There's a BBC Wallander that is brilliant. But there's also a Swedish version that is it's very different. And I actually think is better, although Kenneth Branagh is such a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you haven't seen them, is the Millennium Troika of movies, right? Have you seen those?
No, we're not talking about the dragon tattoo, are we?
Yeah, it's the dragon tattoo.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, yeah. I've seen the Swedish versions. I saw the first American version, the one with Daniel Craig.
The American version is terrible.
It wasn't good at all. But the Swedish versions we've seen.
So it was actually it was a TV movie, right? And when it then became a theater movie, it was cut down to about half the length. So the originals were, I think, so there are three movies, right? For three of the books. And I think the TV series was, each of them were 2 1.5-hour episodes, and the movie version is 3 1.5. So anyway, you lose a lot because there's so many details in those original TV versions.
Yeah. So, I can imagine, because there's so much. Obviously, the books are so rich in detail and so on as well. Because I read the books first and then I watched the movies. But yeah, no, fully with you on that.
Cool.
Pet, thank you so much. And and if you do, well, you're visiting London in December, aren't you? If your schedule allows,
yes.
If you are, and if I haven't scared you, then please do get in touch.
I will.
And I'd love to pop down to wherever you're hanging out and buy you a drink. We were talking about AirPods earlier. Now my stupid things are playing up.
All right, Roberto, it's been a pleasure to be with you here, and I hope the audience found the conversation here valuable and somewhat enlightening.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So once again, Pear's new book, The Price Whisperer, available now on Kindle. Hard copy available to pre-order now. I will put his website link in the show notes. And yeah, from both of us, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is now on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast, and I love feedback, so you can email the show directly at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people you know. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and feel compelled to throw some change our way and support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Rivilla. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one.